How's it going, guys? Dane here with another episode of my shower remodel. In this video, I show you how I tiled our shower with 3x12-inch porcelain tiles.
DIY Dane.
Before I could start, I needed to mark where I wanted the tiles to sit at the top of the tub. I wanted there to be about an 1/8 inch gap for when it comes time to caulk. A laser level would have made this part quicker and easier, but this 2-foot aluminum level worked perfectly fine for me. I also made a vertical mark on the side with the door where the previous tiles sat to match the width of the other side where the hardy backer meets the drywall. Before I can start mortaring the tiles on the wall, I line up the first row using a tile spacer to get an accurate measurement for the tile I'll cut to meet the wall. Since I'm staggering the tiles, I line up the next row using a tile that has a mark at its center to get accurate measurements for each end piece. What I'll be using for my tile cuts is this electric-powered tabletop tile saw. The tray underneath needs to be filled with water to keep the blade wet, keeping both the blade and tiles cool and ensuring cleaner cuts. For marking the cuts, I use a wax pencil, which stays visible while cutting and is easy to wash off without leaving stains. The more measurements and cuts I can make before I start mortaring, the better. It's unfortunate when you have more mortar than tiles you're able to put up. Keeping a firm hold on the tile, I push it slowly into the blade along the wax mark while making sure my fingers stay clear of the blade. I also keep a towel nearby for wiping down the tiles immediately after cutting. The mortar I use for the tiles is the same I used for the cement board. If I didn't already have gray mortar from a previous project, I would have gotten white, since my tiles are also a white color. What I use for mixing the mortar are 2 clean buckets, one filled about 2/3 with water, a sponge, and a mud mixing drill and paddle. Always make sure the paddle is clean before mixing. With mortar, it's not so much a big deal, but a dirty paddle can discolor the grout. Dry mortar from previous projects can also cause the mud to dry quicker than you want. There are instructions on the back of the bag for how much water to use, but what I like to do is use a cup for the powder and a sponge for the water. The sponge helps you use a controlled bit of water at a time. You don't need much. In fact, I actually ended up using a bit too much, so I had to add another scoop. We're looking for a toothpaste-like consistency. If you pull the paddle out, getting a peak in the mud, it should slowly settle. If it doesn't settle, add a little water. If it settles too quickly, add a little powder. Per the instructions, I let this set for 5 minutes. Then mix it one more time. If you're mortaring or grouting for the first time, I do suggest you use less at first, until you get some practice because the mud may dry faster than you can keep up with. Another way to help ensure old, dry mortar doesn't get mixed in, it's a good idea to clean out the bucket between each use. I scrape out any excess mortar with a trowel and transfer it to a box to be thrown away later. Then spray down the inside with water and dump the muddy water in a dirt behind my shed. It usually takes a few washes before it's mostly gone and I can scrub the interior with a wet sponge. I also use the hose and sponge to clean the trowel. For the trowel, I used one with 1/4 inch teeth, the appropriate size for my 3x12-inch tiles. This trowel has triangle teeth for smaller tiles as well, and you'll see me using a different trowel later in the video that has a straight edge on 2 sides. I preferred the one with straight edges because it made applying the mud easier, as well as cleaning the excess mud off the walls and bucket easier. When applying the mud, I try to spread the notches evenly at about a 45-degree angle with the trowel. For the first layer of the tiles along the tub, I make sure it's about 1/8 to 1/4 inch up from the tub using tile wedges. I also make sure the tile is level before applying pressure and wiggling it back and forth to help it lock into place in the mud and get rid of any air pockets behind the tile. Once I have the first tile in place, I apply enough mud to finish the next two. As I work and get into a rhythm, I'm able to work faster and apply more mud for more tiles. To make cleanup easier, I like to wipe away the outer edges of mud so that when I place the tile, it doesn't cause the mud to spread and push out between the tiles. The tile spacers I use between each tile are 1/8 inch thick. With these smaller size tiles, I didn't need to get a special tool to make these cuts. I just used the tile cutter again to cut small notches to the marks I made with my wax pencil. Then broke off those notches. I then like to smooth out the potentially sharp edges with a file before mudding it in place. For the mixing valve, I wanted to have all the cuts done before I mixed a new bucket. Using the row below, I lined up this bottom tile, marked where it lines up with the hardy board, then measured up to the center. I also marked the wall above the tile so I could line up the next row and mark them for cuts. For the right one, I needed to mark and measure the wall, then measure and mark the tile. I just eyeballed the curve because I'm not worried about it being perfect. And once I had the cuts, I was good to go. If you're enjoying this video or finding it helpful, be sure to take a second and hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Once I made it to the last couple rows of the top, I needed to cut thinner tiles to meet the ceiling. To measure this, I stacked a tile with spacers above the last mudded row and measured the space to the ceiling, accounting for the 1/8 inch gap I needed on each side. For these thinner pieces of tile, I like to make sure they have plenty of mud to hold them firmly in place. I then needed to stack the tiles along the side here like so that I could get a measurement for the bottom tile. cut these tiles to hang 3/8 inch over the niche to account for the 1/4 inch thick tile and about an 1/8 inch thick mud. For inside the niche, I cut the back tiles to match the horizontal patterns on the outside wall. I then placed the top tiles to also fall along with the pattern and used some boards to hold them in place for 24 hours to dry, before mudding in the bottom and sides. Another important step was to try and clean off any excess mud within 24 hours before it fully sets. If I waited too long, it would have been much more difficult to clean. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the rest of the remodel on my channel.